Hi everybody, my name is Dana Brink and I am the curriculum specialist at Neverland Nursery School. So you'll see me in lots of these training videos. So thanks for joining. Today we will be talking about Reggio activities and how to set them up properly, something I'm hugely passionate about. So let's go ahead and jump right into the slideshow. In this video, there are so many different beautiful Reggio activities that the Neverland teachers did when I made the intro to the Neverland website. So I'm just going to go over some of the different aspects of these Reggio activities with you today. In a Reggio activity, it's really important to define the space that the child has to use. So as you see in this activity, the child has their own mat, their own plate, their own bowl, their own knife to cut up the bananas. Everything is laid out for them so they know what they can use and what space they have to create whatever they're going to create in the activity. If the activity is a hands-on activity like this one shown, make sure you are down at the kids' level, talking to them, trying to use as many open-ended questions as possible so that thought-provoking conversation happens when the activity is going on. This will have increased learning outcomes for the children if you do this. I would also like to draw your attention to the middle of the table. They have flowers set out, and it's really important to include natural elements to your Reggio style activities. Natural materials appeal deeply to our senses and they make an activity more engaging, so make sure you include these in your Reggio style activities. The center of the table is also a really great place to ask a question and to put that question in writing so that not only the children see it, but the aides and other folks helping can see it and also ask the question and know what the activity is supposed to be about. Doing hands-on activities with the children as a group not only models what the children should be doing as far as behavior and as far as respectfulness for the materials themselves, it can also create deeper exploration and interest if the child has a good relationship with the teacher because they just want to do what the teacher wants to do. One of the biggest points that I want to hit home is to make sure that you're setting up your classroom for play. Get everything ready so that the activities are piquing the kids' interest right off the bat. Next, let's listen to how to present a Reggio activity properly.
Sounds like you guys are all thinking really hard about where rainbows come from. May, she said that they're really pretty and they deserve to be in the sky. Would you guys like to make your own rainbows with all the parts that we've been working on? Raise your hand if you would like to start to make a rainbow. Which colors do you want to make for your rainbow? Do you need a tray? Let's go get the tray.
Loose parts are another huge part of Reggio activities, and it can be a bunch of random stuff. This classroom had painted their own loose parts to use in their rainbow activity. Loose parts can be random recycled materials, or they can be natural materials, which is what I prefer. This classroom did a beautiful, beautiful job using tons of natural materials so that the kids could have some exploration with clay. And they also paired dinosaurs, which was a big interest of the class at the time. Lastly, loose parts are open-ended. Next are some really good examples of teachers defining the space. This teacher uses trays, this one uses paper, and then also look at how they have set up the classroom for play. Many of these examples of Reggio activities have a question asked, an artful display in the middle, and also invoke curiosity really, really well. Don't forget that you can set out examples for the children, so you can make something with the materials and put it in the middle, or you can find a book that has a picture of whatever you're talking about and stick that in the middle. The basic idea is that you're trying to provoke curiosity out of them. You are trying to get them to use their creativity, and you aren't trying to get them to recreate something that you've made. A Reggio activity is not something that you will find on Pinterest or Instagram. It's something that is unique to the children that you are teaching. You can use ideas that you have found on the internet, but definitely relate them to the children that you are working with. Your activities should provoke interest, they should spark conversation, they should further learning and create more ideas for you to teach off of in the future. So I feel like provocations are somewhat of an abstract idea for most teachers and something that's kind of hard to understand. But simply put, a provocation is something used to provoke interest. So I use provocation basically like a synonym to activity when I talk about Reggio styled activities. So when I say, what is the provocation? That's really saying, what is your Reggio styled activity? A provocation is something that's used to expand discussion. It's something that is supposed to pique interest, create more creativity and bigger ideas within the student. So I hope that makes sense. So when I say, oh, your provocation, that's really me saying, oh, your activity, most simply put. So the best way to start to develop a provocation is by asking the question, what are they wondering about? What are the children curious about? What are they interested in? And what would they like to know? Those are the best questions to ask in order to figure out what your provocation or your Reggio styled activities should be. And so you want to understand and explore that child's curiosity. And the way you understand what they are wanting to know about is by lots of different things. Observation being the best one, but they also might directly ask you questions. They could directly ask you questions. They could make statements. They could even draw or write or talk about whatever they are interested in. Sometimes when children are younger, this definitely comes through more non-verbally rather than by actually talking about it. So you want to use your skills of observation to figure out what a child or group of children as a whole is wondering about and where they need to expand developmentally. So once you have figured out what the children are interested in, it is now your opportunity to take that and to turn it into a Reggio styled activity. So you need to figure out what the child already knows and what their misconceptions are about the subject. So take your time in observing the children in their play, their writing and drawing, what they're talking about, and figure out where you need to start as far as your teaching goes. So it is now time to plan your activity. So think about, again, what the child wants to know as far as your subject matter goes. And then you're going to use one of the following different activity styles to develop your Reggio styled activity. And in the next couple slides, I have quite a few pictures to kind of outline what these styles look like. And then remember always to use your creativity when it comes to this. All Reggio styled activities should look different and be different. They're never the same. And that's really why I love them. They're beautiful and they are unique to the teacher and to the group of students. So next I want to talk about Reggio styled activities. And before we get started on that, I did want to mention that you can use a lot of different techniques. So when I talk about all of the different slides, you can use those in combination with each other. It doesn't need to be one or the other. You can use as many of these in one activity as you would like, or as few as you would like. It just really depends on what you are doing and what level your children are at, and really how in depth you want the unit to be. So when you are doing these activities, one of the best things that you can do is create an observational type of Reggio activity. So in this example, this child is deeply interested in bugs and the outdoors, and so the teacher found a snail and decided to put it in a terrarium so that the child could observe that snail all day long, and the child was just so fascinated with it. And a lot of learning took place out of the observations that this child did while just looking at the snail. So this is a great one. Observation. It's a wonderful way to set up a provocation or a Reggio-styled activity. One aspect that should definitely be used is observation. So keep that in mind, and we will move on to the next slide now. So the next example of Reggio-styled activities that I want to talk about is using sensory exploration. So in this example, this is a sensory activity. And the more senses that you can engage within an activity, the better. So when you're doing your Reggio-styled activities, incorporating some sort of, sight, hearing, sense of smell, sense of touch, you want to incorporate as many as possible. And this one is definitely highlighting the sense of smell. So within this, they have also paired visual cards for the children to be able to identify the different types of smells that they are smelling, which is really cool. So definitely make sure you incorporate as many of these senses as possible within your Reggio-styled activities. In the next slide, we are exploring different art mediums, and this is a huge part of the Reggio philosophy, one that I'm not going to dive super deep in, but remember to use different art materials, not just paint, not just glue, not just the standard stuff. In Neverland, we love to use clay and natural clay. This is a art material that doesn't really find its way into many classrooms. And the same thing with this example that's shown here. They are using wire. Wire is a really fun art medium to use with kids, and they can create all different things with it. In this example, they have a provocation showing a tree, and then the teacher has made a tree out of the wire, and then there's wire for the kids to use for them to make their own tree. And the same thing can be said for the next picture, which is obviously they are exploring Eric Carle and the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and they have created their own very hungry caterpillars or butterflies in the example. So I love this one. I think it's super fun, and just don't be afraid with different art mediums. Incorporate lots of loose parts and recycled materials and really anything you can get your hands on as a teacher, and use that to explore. And okay, so we have observational art. So this is a huge one, and this is something that you can also incorporate within basically any other type of Reggio activity. You want to have a sample of an artwork or something that the kids can look at for inspiration. So a lot of the time we do this with books. If there is a particular book or subject matter, grab that, set it up on the table, and then set your art materials or other materials around it to invoke that creativity and curiosity. So in this example, there are rock formations and different art pieces used with rocks that the teacher has set out for the kiddos to look at. Obviously, this was probably done by the teacher, the work sample there. But yeah, it's really good to set those examples out and then see what the kids create based on what you have put out for them to explore. And the next picture, I really wanted to mention this because it got my wheels going. But make sure that you don't just keep your Reggio-styled activities inside the classrooms. You can use the outdoor facilities as well to create provocations. This is something that I do not see a whole lot of currently that I would love to see incorporated throughout our school. Using the outdoor environment is hugely Reggio and very fun to do. It creates lots and lots of opportunity for creativity for the kids. So in this example, they have a book with some sample art, some sample visuals, and they have paint and paper and easels set up for the kids so that it is ready to go for them to explore. So, discovery activities they can be done indoors or outdoors. I love discovery activities outdoors, especially because you have a huge space to work in that's much more free than the inside classrooms are. So the inside classrooms, we have lots of rules, walking feet, quiet voices, that sort of thing. Discovery activities that are done outdoors, they just have so much more freedom. They're so fun. So you can set up different activities outdoors, such as music exploration, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do comfortably indoors. They can be louder outside, they can run, they can use those gross motor skills. So creating things like scavenger hunts and setting up gardening activities, that is a great way to incorporate discovery within your Reggio styled activities. Okay, so once you have figured out what you want your activity to be, you have figured out what the interest of your children or child is, you can now gather your materials for the activity. And I put this in there because you would think that, yes, that's very self-explanatory. However, I see a lot that teachers tend to throw activities together at the last minute, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but a huge component of a Reggio-styled activity is thinking about what you want to do in that activity and what you want to accomplish based on what you're doing before you do it. So just throwing together things and having no thought behind it is definitely something that you want to avoid. You want to be able to have a very thought-provoking activity ready to go for the kids, and they need to have specific goals in mind. So I will talk about goals in a couple slides further, just looking ahead a little bit. And alongside this, let's talk about themes within the classroom. A lot of the time when teachers are new, they want to develop their activities based on set themes, and that is not something we do in the Reggio philosophy, so I'll touch on that in the next slide. So I have put together a list of themes that you should use. I did not create a list of themes you shouldn't use because the list is never ending. But some quick examples of themes you should not use and the reasons why. A really common one, farm animals. If that doesn't have anything to do with your group of students in your classroom community, it should not be explored. All of the themes that we should use need to have something to do with the kids in your classroom, your direct outside community, and it could also be the children's background. You can bring some of that into your teaching. Nature, this is something that is observed by children every day and something that sparks a lot of curiosity. So if they are looking at nature, excited about nature, wanting to explore that, totally fine to use. If the children find something fascinating within a picture they saw or a book or a photo, you can use that as your theme as well. There are different, obviously, anything that they are interested in, that can be a theme. So you want to take that. That is the biggest overall theme that I want you to use, but their interests are huge. So if it's an interest of theirs or if it's an object that they are interested in, go ahead and explore that. And then conceptual. So this is found a lot in earlier age groups. In infant and toddler age groups, they do this a lot. Infants love to explore light. They love to explore light, dark. They're very interested in that sort of thing. Shadows, light reflections. So this is also something that can be explored, and you can observe their curiosities in this when they're younger. And if you do, that would be a great thing to pick up on and to use as a theme. You can also use events that happen in children's lives. So we celebrate holidays a lot of the time in our classrooms. This is okay only if someone in your group of students celebrates that holiday. So if you're going along and you find out that one of your students celebrates Hanukkah. It would be a great thing to incorporate some of that into your teaching. Something that wouldn't quite make sense is if, there was something like Kwanzaa and no one in your group of students celebrated it. It's too much of an abstract concept sometimes, so you want to make sure that you are keeping your subject themes relevant to your classroom culture. So yes, keep that in mind. And then the next thing is art materials. Art materials always, always, always can be something to explore, and this is really actually important, especially when you have new kids or it's a new school year. If you use art materials, you should show the kids how to use those art materials in a respectful way. So get them in a group environment and model how to use specific art materials that they have never seen or maybe just need a refresher in. And we'll touch on that more in the next couple slides because it's really important. And Reggio-styled activities can be circle time activities as well. You can use a Reggio-styled activity in any part of your day. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing are questions. Questions from the teacher, questions from the student. Any question that is being asked, you can make a theme or unit around that. So let's go ahead and move on to goals. So the goal of all activities should be to increase child development skills within your group of students. And obviously these are social emotional, which are, interpersonal skills, cognitive, language, literacy, and physical development. So we touch on all of these areas of development within our app that we use, Bright Wheel. So whenever you are doing your inputting in that, make sure that you are keeping in mind what your child development goals are. And within your activities, what are your goals, your educational goals within the activities that you are creating? Always keep that in the back of your head and try to figure out ways to deepen that learning. So ultimately, the intention of a provocation is to provide an invitation for a child to explore and express themselves. It should be an open-ended activity and provide a means for expression whenever possible. So this is a huge, huge, huge piece of the Reggio philosophy, expression. We want to make it to where the children can express themselves in as many ways and as deeply as they possibly can. So create your activities based on that goal as well. Go ahead and watch this video montage of how to display a provocation. so the next thing we need to talk about is how does your activity look? So if you have put together a Reggio styled activity and you've just kind of thrown the crayons all over the table and slapped down some paper, that's not what we are looking for. We are looking for something that is like these pictures in this slide. So these two pictures are very different, but they are both Reggio-styled activities. And let me explain how. Okay, so in the first picture, we have the space that is defined. We have the striped mat, which defines the space, and then another mat on top of that to where the child can place the blocks or place the dominoes or the rocks, etc. In the second picture, we have a defined space by the blanket on the ground. It shows you where each child is able to sit. It looks like this activity is set up for 4 children. The stand-up easel towards the back does not have a defined space, and if this were me, I would create something to where the kids knew that that was their space. You can do this with carpet squares. You can do this with, really low flat stumps, anything like that. You can do this with chairs. And then, so the space is defined though with the blanket for the smaller easels. And then everything is very aesthetically pleasing, really in both of these pictures in very different ways. The first picture is extremely organized, and I love that in a Reggio activity. I think it just is gorgeous. So I would encourage you to do this. Make it very, very organized. Don't just slap down materials. In the second picture, you have all of the materials set out and ready to go for each child. So if I were to zoom in on this picture, you could see it a little better, but each child has paint. They each have a paint palette that they can use. There are paints set up, there are brushes ready to go, and each has a mat where they can do the painting. And then the easel, the stand-up easel, obviously, that is the backdrop for that. So make sure that you keep into account, or you take into account, what your activity looks like, and make sure that it is an organized place for the children to learn. In this slide, we have a focus on natural materials, and this is something that I want every teacher to really, really hone in on. Natural materials are such a huge part of the Reggio philosophy and of our school. There are natural materials everywhere. There's a reason we have, wooden cars and, clay that we work with. As much as possible, try to include natural materials in your activity. They're not only beautiful, but they also appeal deeply to our senses. Their color, texture, smell, and even taste are far more engaging than plastic, and I will hold strong on that one. I really, really do feel this way personally, and I hope that you do as well. Okay, so I have talked about this quite a bit in the previous slides, but I'm really gonna, hit it home here. So defining the child's space within a Reggio activity is very important because it gives them the ability to know where their boundary is when they are working. This can cut down on several things such as, behavioral issues between children. If children are fighting over objects and materials in the classroom, that is no good. So you want to define the child's space so that they know where their boundary is to work. And if you want to do an activity to where you are trying to touch on social emotional development and you want to work on sharing, for example, you can purposely set up an activity to do this. So what I mean by this is, let's take the second picture here on the slide. If you were to set out a basket of leaves like they did, both children can choose from that basket. Thus, they are learning to share. If you are not quite there with your kiddos, what you could do is you could have a basket for each kid rather than one for them to share. So anyway, defining the child's space, very important. Several reasons to do this, but it can meet several different of your developmental goals if you do it in the correct way. So kind of take a moment, think about that a little bit. Pause the video if you need to and discuss with your teachers on what the best way to define the child's space would be for you in your classroom. Okay, so I had to include this video so that our trusty teacher Nick could show us how to present a Reggio styled activity, since we aren't able to do this training in person, so I can't call on him unwillingly. So this is how we're going to do it this time. We are going to watch him show us how to present a Reggio styled activity, and he does this in such a perfect way. And when you watch this, you'll see that this could be the start of such a long and wonderful cooking exploration unit. So listen to all of the questions he's asking. Notice how it's very hands-on. Notice how he has set up the materials to where they can all see what they're working with. Everything about this is a Reggio styled activity. So go ahead and watch the video.
And we need to get rid of the skin. We don't want to eat that. That looks pretty unappetizing, huh? That's kind of like bark, like tree bark. So we're gonna scoop it out. I'm gonna do that real quick. But in the meantime, we can talk about what you guys want to put in next. What do you think the next ingredient should be?
Tomato.
You think the tomatoes and the onions? That's a pretty good idea. I think we can go with that. Do you want to help me put it in?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, me.
We'll give everyone a chance to try to put something in, okay?
Can I do it?
Yeah, you can have everyone.
What are you doing?
We're scooping out the avocado from its skin. Remember, we don't want to eat that. So now that we got our avocado out, I'm gonna smash it up a little bit. We're gonna make like a dip at it. So you can put crackers or tortillas in it. You can use it on anything. You put it in your. Raylan was talking about earlier how he saw it at Taco Bell. Raylan said we should put in the onions and the tomatoes next. So do you want to hold out your hand? All right, everyone gets to put some in, but I'm going to give some. I'm going to give a little bit to Raylan. He gets to put some in. You want to put it in? Yeah. You want to put some in too? All right, here we go. You want to put some in your hand? Yeah. There you go.
Come in.
It's my turn.
It's your turn. Here, put out your hand. Here you go. Put some in there.
Pass it to the
And then Haley's turn. And you want some? Let's put some in. Here you go. You put it in. What about you, Emily? Yeah. All right. Here's some tomatoes. All right. So we got all our tomatoes and our onions in. What do you guys think is the next ingredient? What do you want to put in next?
That one.
That one? You want to put the spices in? Who wants to help me squeeze the lemon?
Me.
Why don't you find it that you like it? Why don't you try it?
I like that.
Just try a little bit.
What does it taste like?
Avocado.
Avocado.
I like
What do you think, Keone? Is it good?
Try it. Did you try it though? You want to try a little bit?
I like it.
But look,
You like it?
got tomatoes.
So in the last video with Chef Nick, we saw the kids do basically a precursor to what could have been a really long unit of cooking. So if the kids were new to cooking, it is really important within really any type of unit you start. If they are new to it, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to model and display your activity for the children before they jump into a huge task. And this really helps with behaviors in the classroom. If, you know, say in this picture, for example, that I have on the slide here, we have some students painting a stick. Sticks can be dangerous. Lots of the different materials that we use can potentially be dangerous in some way. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to model that activity and how to properly use those tools before you set them out for the kids to explore. And so I have written here, model and explain the boundaries of the activity. Make sure that they know the rules and how to work with the materials. And this is best done in a group setting. I'm a huge advocate of group time and circle time, and this is really the time to model Reggio-styled activities, along with a whole host of other things, but it's really important to do this. So I also have display a well thought out activity, not only for when the children are doing the exploration, but for when you are presenting the activity as well. So what I mean by this is, in the last clip, Nick had a lot of material set out, and he modeled how to make guacamole with some hands-on help as well. And this is the perfect way of modeling how to do a Reggio-styled activity for later use. So you could start out by doing what Nick did, and then say the next day you could start really small if they're new to cooking. You could set out tomatoes, for example, and have them use a child-safe knife and cut up tomatoes. And that can be the Reggio-styled activity for the day. And then the next day, you could, do a mortar and pestle sort of situation where they crush up cilantro. And then the next day, you could set out something for them to stir, like spices, or spices for them to smell, for example. So there are lots of different ways to do this, but making sure you're taking a step back and not just jumping into a full-fledged, multi-step activity when the kids aren't ready for it. You want to make sure that you're doing little steps before that to get to that big end goal. And you can start by showing them the end goal by modeling those activities like Nick did in the last slide. Okay, so ask open-ended questions. So this is hugely important to develop language and to further language development within children. So before you start your activities, it's a really good idea to go over in your head or write them down. What questions do you want to ask the children so that they further their development? What can I say to get them talking? And one of the best ways to do this is to put those open-ended questions in the provocation itself. So when you see in the videos, when you see the plaques with how to create a rainbow, or how tall can you make your tower, or whatever it is, those are great open-ended questions for the teachers to go ahead and ask the kids so that they can further their creativity. So try to add these within your activities as much as possible, and I love to see them on display. It also helps other teachers know what is going on and to help them also engage with the children when they're doing their activity. So when you are creating your activities and implementing those activities, make sure that in the back of your mind, you are thinking of more activities related to the ones that you are already doing that you can do in the future. And doing this allows the children to dive deeper within the subject matter of whatever you're teaching. It continues the learning. It makes it so the learning doesn't end there. And it helps children make connections, which is the ultimate goal. And it increases positive child development within the children and reduces the negative behaviors that you are going to see inside of the classroom. So the last thing that I would love you to do is to create your own Reggio-styled activity within the classroom that you are in, and then go ahead and follow the steps. I want you to send in that provocation to the director when you are finished, and I also would love it if you would look around at the other teachers' provocations in your classroom. So each one of you needs to do a different provocation and turn that in. So this is not a group activity. This is an individual activity, but definitely utilize the people that you have in your room with you. Bounce ideas off of each other and really talk about what you're doing. This is so much fun, and then leave that activity there for the kids to explore when they come back to class. And thank you so much for watching. That really is the end of the training. So I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Bye. Say bye. Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.